Hi, today's job is fixing the window motor. This is on a Landrover Freelander1 2002. First job is to remove the door card. So 2 screws that hold the door handle in position, take those off, and 1 screw that holds the handle surround on, and the rest of it is just pulled off because these little press-on clips go through these holes, so you need to give it a sharp pull. The rest of it will come off, lift it over the door clip, and then first thing is to test the electrics are getting to the motor. So with the ignition on and a multimeter, and one way you'll get minus 12 volts, next way you'll get plus 12 volts. So the electrics is getting into the motor. With it connected, there's no noise coming out of it, so I suspect the motor is seized. By the way, to get this clip off, it's easy to get a little screwdriver, easiest to get a little screwdriver down the top just to push off that clip. You might be able to lever it from the side in that position. Bit of a job otherwise. Looks like you can press on that bottom piece in order to release it. So next job is to dismantle the motor. You need to undo a bolt which connects the window regulator mechanism to the window. If you feel around the back, the bit connects a long metal pole onto another piece of metal as part of the window, needs to be unbolted. So we do that. Remove these 3 bolts. Then we'll hold the window in position by applying lots of tape to it so it doesn't get in the way. And then the window mechanism can then be lifted out. You see I had a quick look by taking the bottom off the motor, which showed it was all seized up. Hopefully with a bit of wangling around we can get this thing out like so. So yeah, what had happened is basically water's got in the motor, seized this iron core onto the iron magnets, and it all rusted up and seized up. And if that was the only problem, could have freed it up, scratched away the rust and freed it, but in the process of pulling this off, some of the wires got disconnected and it's still very stiff to turn. So I'm now going to dismantle the whole of the motor, fix any wiring issues, check the brushes and lubricate the whole mechanism. So we need a set of these star type screwdriver bits, undo the 3 bolts on the back. Next I'm hoping that we should be able to leave the cables in position, just prise apart the motors. So we need to bend back some of these plastic clips around it. Look, yep, there we go. That's quite handy, we can leave the cables in situ already set up. Now this cover comes off, see the lubrication has failed somewhat. Oh, a whole sticky mess. Now with a bit of wiggling you can actually get the shaft out of the end there, and which is useful because we can then clean up all of the old grease from the splines of this grooves of this worm gear. So with the motor removed, you might find that this coil with the cable wrapped around it, or a piece of plastic, might pop out. If it does, don't worry, just rewind it. Hopefully you can see how that goes. So with the mechanism down to one end over here, then obviously we're going to have extra cable at this end, so the majority of the cabling is due to this one. That just pulls out and goes in that slot on the spring loading, which we'll do when we fit it. And there's just a very small amount of the other end of the cable that's wrapped around, so that should be ready for refitting the motor later. In terms of the connections to the motor, I don't think anything has actually come off as a result of pulling it apart from this little connector that plugs into that piece of metal down there that connects to these 2 pieces of metal, which we should be able to reassemble just by pushing it on, get a screwdriver down there and push it back on again. So basically the current goes in here, goes up to this piece of wire which is a little coil to cut out interference, then goes onto one brush. The other brush similarly comes back down this coil, goes onto this piece of metal which connects round via I guess that's the thermal fuse, connects around here, and then onto that, which connects to the other side of the electrical connection. Next job is to clean out the rusty inside of the motor, so you need to get all the bits out of it. I put lots of oil down here as well to keep the rust at bay and to lubricate it. I've cleaned up the copper, make sure that you haven't got any pieces of copper connecting the electrical connections between each coil, so rub a little screwdriver down between each slot. Then get some grease, and you can use any sort of grease. I think I've got some Moly Grease here, which is quite good for lubrication of these sort of things. So we've got plenty down into the gearing, like so, and a bit more Moly Grease around the worm gear. Then let's clean ourselves off. We need to reassemble the whole thing, so it just needs a little bit of a wiggling. Be careful as you go past the brushes. If your brushes are particularly good condition, you might want to prise them back with a little screwdriver or something. I think, yep, we can get that in position like so. That turns very nicely now. Well worth checking now the resistance across the power connectors to the motor. Should be a few ohms, as you can see on the meter here. It is fluctuating as I'm turning the motor around, so what you're looking for is any open circuits or any short circuits. If you find any problems, you'll have to trace the circuit and measure the resistance as you go around the circuit through the brushes and the motor and out again. Quite often you can find the brushes will wear, and as such the pieces of metal that hold the brushes can bend in, so they're not completely opposite each other, and to fix that you just need to bend them straight so they are completely opposite. So the next job we're doing here is to reassemble the magnets of the motor, and to stop water getting in again we're putting some polymer sealant just around the edge of the magnet casing, as you can see here, and then we'll reassemble it. The casing of the motor with magnets can go on one of two ways. I actually originally got it on the wrong way. The only downside is that it just means that the motor and the window, instead of going up it goes down, and instead of going down it goes up, but you just use the switch in a different way. It doesn't matter too much, but if possible try and get it back on the same way that you took it off. And we can actually test it by reconnecting it onto the original plug. Testing it with ignition on, and we can see motor is now working both directions. Right, then to reassemble we have to have the cable wound up like that, in which case you need to pull against these springs, hold it in place, while at the same time trying to assemble the motor. And I think what we'll do is to hold that there, let's get a little screwdriver, just try and hold that down, stop it popping out while we put the motor in place. Once the motor is in place, it should hold the coil. There we go. We've got the screws back in. Right, we've got plenty of oil on the cable. Stop it rusting and giving any problems in the future. Test it again. That's good. A bit more oil on the cable this side. It all seems to be good. Just a matter of reassembling. Then see if we can work out how to get this in. Don't really want to force it, so just need to work out the technique of doing it. There we go. So we operate the window motor till the slider is in its lower position, then lower down the window just under halfway, and the two holes will then line up, and it makes it a lot easier to reassemble. So just hold the mechanism in the right position while you've got these three bolts in. Right, it's just a quick run just to confirm the window's now working. So just reassemble the panel and job done. Thanks for watching. There's one more problem with this window construction, and that is that these plastic pieces are very easy to come off. Essentially the problem is this piece of plastic, which is a clip that holds it in place, has snapped off on this one. See, it's here in place on this one, which stops that from moving. So what I'm going to have to do is put some sealant around that to hold that permanently in place. But for the moment I've bent this piece of metal to more firmly grip the plastic. Alright, that's a bit of the polymer sealant which should firmly hold that plastic in place.